I know obviously, the Greens do have upper house seats, but in the lower house, we both know, right, there's majority government. They don't need your vote. The Labor government doesn't need your vote in the lower house. Are you actually going to be able to get some of these things done and actually just be heard generally as a local representative when they can just bypass you?
Yeah, we've already achieved quite a significant amount on a state level, from banning native forest logging, as well as a ban on toxic gas fracking as well. Also the recent pill testing. There's so many examples that even with the small amount of representatives that we have in Parliament for the Greens, we've already achieved so much. And even in the past few weeks, having the first trial of the first pill testing, the former Premier said that will never happen. It's, a Greens dream. And yet last week we had the first trial, which was so successful. And that's because of Greens pressure. So we need more Greens in Parliament to be pushing and making sure that we have the best outcomes for our community.
Now, on the 50-cent fares thing, which is this kind of key policy that you brought forward the other day, I think most people generally agree that the prices can get pretty ridiculous, especially if you're using it a lot.
Yep.
This is obviously an inner city seat. It's very well established how public transport's important in the inner city. But is this going to be enough in terms of dealing with the other issues that public transport faces? Frequency is a huge issue. Are there any measures to tackle that? Because I know, I think the Public Transport Users Association, they just called this policy a distraction.
So firstly, I guess tackling the actual policy. So it's 50-cent public transport fares, and you can travel anywhere across Victoria for just 50 cents from metro to regional Victoria. And the biggest part of that, and for this policy, is that it is a cost of living measure and also an environmental measure. So we're incentivizing people to get out of their cars, use public transport, less congestion, less pollution. But absolutely, the Greens have been calling for more frequent and convenient and accessible public transport for a really long time. It's still in our platform policy for transport. So while obviously we want to incentivize more people to be using public transport, we know that in Queensland, when they had 50-cent public transport fares, and now it has tripartisan support and is officially implemented, it only increased patronage by about 11%. And we know that our levels of patronage have still not returned back to pre-COVID levels. So most of that impact as well was on weekends, we noticed, when the fares reduced in regional Vic as well. So obviously we definitely, as you said, we need more reliable, consistent public transport. But that's just an addition that we'll be pushing for too.
Goes without saying as well that, public transport needs funding at some extent. Can it still be, reliably funded? Can we still be, pushing for better upgrades, not just in trams, in trains, in buses, while cutting fares, which again, while annoying and expensive, they can help to pay for these kind of things?
Absolutely, yeah. And so Greens have actually put forward some options on how we could raise the revenue to be able to afford this trial, which was a $339 million trial for 6 months here in Victoria. And one of them included increasing the online gambling ad levy to 20%, which would move that revenue, instead of going back to the racing industry, would be put into good public services. We've also put an option forward to be able to have a bank levy as well at a 0.05% of Victoria's share of bank liabilities, and that has been costed to over $1.6 billion for our government here. So, I'm hearing a lot in terms of this argument around, it's a dream, but, we have the costing. It's been costed by the Parliamentary Budget Office. We know it's achievable, completely realistic. And so that's why we're pushing to do it.
Guys, just quickly before moving on, I know in the national platform, the Greens do call for free public transport. Is that something you'd like to achieve at a later date, something that the Victorian Greens would like to attain? Because it has been pushed elsewhere by the Greens.
Yeah, so I guess this is a start. And in Victoria, we wanted to trial it and see how it worked and if there's any improvements. So we want to make sure that it's quite effective and does what it aims to do. So I think a 6-month trial with 50 cents is a good start, and then we'll be able to see what we can do after that.
All right. Something that the Greens have also copped criticism for, not just in Prahran, mind you, but speaking of some of the candidates and seeing the other candidates in Prahran, I should say, and seeing some of their messages, is that your focus isn't on the electorate, that it's on international issues. Gaza has been mentioned. The Greens and the Victorian Parliament have staged several protest actions about it. I know MPs have been at these protests, but obviously there's only so much a state government, state parliament can do on something like that anyway. Is that a fair criticism that it's too focused on overseas issues for a state parliament and that you would be too focused on it as a state MP?
So my priority here and putting my hand up is because I deeply love our community here. I teach Pilates just in South Yarra. I walk my dog around the park in St Kilda East. So I deeply know and love our community here. And what I've been hearing on the ground and from people in the community is they want real local action. They also want, higher level action like rent freezes and capping increases and that sort of thing. But on that local level, we've got some incredible policies to be able to improve the area. For example, saving Windsor Community Children's Centre, which is an incredible resource that we have here in Prahran for young families that rely on it, and looks like it might be sold off very soon. So we're pushing to make sure that we can save that. Other sorts of public transport in the area is upgrading South Yarra Station so we can have an overpass and a second entrance. Revitalising Chapel Street as well with local business support and more community services. There's some incredible local policies that we can have here, and Greens want to make sure that we don't privatise and sell off everything, but we actually keep our good public services here for our community.
You've held this seat, obviously, as a party for just over a decade or just under, it's late 2014, give or take a decade. What has the party actually been able to get done for the electorate just locally? Speaking on what you were just mentioning there, what's the record been for the past 10 years here?
Absolutely. So a major win was the Prahran High School, being able to deliver that, which was a really exciting one. As I mentioned as well, we've been pushing for pill testing for a really long time, and we're able to successfully achieve that. As I mentioned as well, the native forest logging, a lot of the community here in Prahran are quite frustrated by the lack of climate action, and people have told me that they want to see us driving that more and making sure that we keep that root of climate too. And my background in environmental engineering has meant that that's going to be a massive focus of me too. But also during COVID, Greens were the ones that pushed to make sure that that rent couldn't increase during that period and you couldn't have unlawful evictions. And so, on the ground, we've had real measurable deliverables for our community. And so that's what I really will be making sure that I prioritise going forward.
All right, just finally, I know that at some level you're having to court some of these Labor voters. The party had 26% in 2022. They don't have a candidate on the ballot this time. Apart from your own messages and everything we've just talked about, how are you going to make sure people know there's a by-election on, that they have to vote, that that you're standing, obviously, but just getting that message out? Right now, a lot of people would be on holidays, wouldn't care about politics. What are you going to do to make sure that people are, aware and actively engaged in this by-election?
So we've been door knocking for the past few months, speaking with people one-on-one, holding numerous stalls where we're, sharing that information. A lot of it has also been on social media and advertising in the streets. But the best thing for this has just been community engagement and chatting with people on the ground to, firstly hear their issues, what they're concerned about, let them know about the by-election, let them know their options. And it's a really important one because especially young people are so disenfranchised. I spoke with someone actually last week who pretty much told me there's no point updating my VEC details because I'll probably just move in a year. And so that sort of instability just really shows this voter disenfranchisement that we're seeing. So we'll continue to be out on the doors, chatting with our community and showing them that, there's choices outside of the major parties. We need more locals and less career politicians with vested interests. And nothing changes if nothing changes.
All right. Really appreciate your time. Best luck. We will cover the campaign closely. Thank you.
Thanks, Leo.